Hi, lovely. I'm Louise. I'm a counsellor based in Brisbane and working here in my office and online, mainly with women with anxiety and or ADHD. And so something that I get asked quite a lot is, well, how do I know if it's ADHD? What are the female ADHD symptoms? They don't seem that clear. So if you landed here wondering whether you might have ADHD, welcome. And I'm really glad you found me because it comes up quite a lot. So people will come along thinking, oh, I'm just so stressed. I think I might be burnt out. I think I might be anxious. Or, I've been Googling ADHD symptoms and I think I might have it. But at the same time, it doesn't make sense because I'm not hyperactive. Well, what are you? Well, I'm exhausted and I can't switch off. And if this is you feel like you overthink everything. Perhaps you've been told that you're too sensitive. You're probably doing a really good job at work, but it's exhausting because, it costs you everything. You're working so hard to keep it going and everything else in your life going. Or you might find work really difficult. You might find that you change jobs, you're a job hopper, or, it goes great for a while and then things slip off. So for whichever version it is, you might be thinking, what is wrong with me? Why can't I just do this like everybody else? Um, or you could be thinking, well, there's nothing wrong with me, which is correct, but I've managed this far, I've coped this far. If I had ADHD, surely I'd know by now. Well, I'm a late diagnosed woman with ADHD, and I get slightly embarrassed still sometimes. I did a psychology degree. I'm a registered counsellor. I've done extra counselling qualifications. Um, it didn't occur to me that I might have ADHD until the classic, my kid was getting diagnosed, and the pediatrician went, it often runs in families. And even then, took me a second before the light bulb went off. I thought she meant I needed to bring my other kid in for checking. But, it's because ADHD in women does look like our classic picture of ADHD. We tend to think of the hyperactive little boy who just can't sit still and who fidgets. And most of what we know about ADHD does indeed come from research on young boys. That disruptive, it's out there, it's fidgeting, it's hyperactive, it's kind of hard to miss. And even in young boys, ADHD, to be fair, does not always present that way. And particularly though for women and girls, we tend to internalize and that hyperactivity, it's not visible because it's internal. It's the mind that's overthinking and running all the time. And also we kind of learn early to compensate and to appear calm. We're often rewarded for, you're so nice and quiet and I love the way you just sit quietly and, read or whatever. So we do tend to appear more capable and hold it together. I hear this quite a lot from clients. Well, I just wasn't bad enough. I heard it literally from a client this morning. My mum thought there was something, but I was doing okay. So she thought, well, there's no point. And why would I, look into this? She's doing fine. But the outside doesn't show the internal struggle. We're just quietly struggling. And over time, that masking is exhausting. And the exhaustion often gets mistaken for something else entirely. Things that can come up, the chronic overwhelm, that these are not classic ADHD symptoms, but these are the things that go on. That sense of it's not just about being busy, but being unable to completely cope with and process everything coming towards us. That overthinking that just can't switch off. All brains think all the time. That's what brains do. Nobody's brain stops. But that overthinking, that, going through all the different things that could happen, and it's exhausting. The big one that isn't really talked about a lot is the emotional dysregulation. So much ADHD content is about oh, they're always late, or, they're so scattered they keep losing things, and just make a list. And the emotional dysregulation is actually the one that catches most of us a lot. That feelings just hit harder and faster than may seem proportionate. I'm a classic for crying even at an ad just because it's got an animal, especially a puppy. But I'll cry at an ad. I'll get cranky at the small thing, and many ADHDers will get cranky quite quickly at things that might seem small, but also that might seem unjust. There's that sense of, that's just not fair. Which links a little bit to another bit of a classic, I guess, symptom that can be exhausting, and that's rejection sensitivity or RSD. ADHDers will tend to take things more personally, read into things, feel things as criticism, be more sensitive to criticism, whether real or perceived. It's physically, whew, it actually gets us. There is a bit, of course, of the classic time blindness that is talked about, starting things and not finishing things, but most of it is more that internal stuff, the overthinking, the feeling things strongly, and the exhaustion of looking like you're coping because you have spent decades making it look easy, making it look like, oh yeah, people will ask you to do things, you'll end up doing extra things and favors because you look so capable. So this might be the picture so far. So that covers a little bit of the, well, how do I know it's ADHD and what are the things that people don't see? But the next question is kind of, but how do I know it's ADHD and not anxiety or trauma or ASD or burnout? And it's a really good question. And often it'll be a combination of those things. I mean, burnout, when you've spent decades coping, very likely will come along. Anxiety will come up from years of having always tried to keep it together and overthinking things. Anxiety's one of the most common things that will bring people to look for help to start with, and then realize there's ADHD trotting along on underneath it. The things often go together. Trauma can look like ADHD and it can make ADHD worse. And there's also a bit of trauma that comes from being an ADHDer. We're more likely to have risky behaviors, particularly in our teens when, our thinking brain's not fully developed. We can sometimes land in scrapes, for want of a better word, more often. And, we can end up with higher rates of addiction and things. And also the small t trauma of being told just more often of you're too sensitive or why can't you just do it or those little bits of correction that ADHD kids just do get more often. So there are lots of reasons, why it might be tricky to pick out, hang on, what is this? Is it this or this? And this is one of the reasons why I think diagnosis is a really good idea. That's what assessment is for, so that you don't have to figure out, well, is it this or this? Go and sit down with the appropriate professional in your area. Where I am in Queensland, that's either a psychiatrist or from late last year, a GP who's done an extra bit of qualification and can do the assessments now. So go sit down with somebody who can do a valid assessment and give you that bit of clarity. Um, why might you do that? You might ask. Like, I've coped this far. Is it even worth it? It takes time. It's expensive. It can be both time consuming and expensive. So this question, of course, comes up a lot. And again, it's really valid. Um, I, as I say, had no clue at ADHD until it was pointed out to me. So I didn't really think over it for too long, but I did come up for my kid a little bit. Well, do you want to get them labeled? You know what they say? They're going okay. They pass everything. Um, the thing is, yes, ADHD is a label, but it's the correct label if that's what's happening. um, Without the correct label, people might just label you, well, you're lazy, you're too sensitive, you're just not trying hard enough. Whoa, classic. And, a diagnosis can give you, first off, access to support, including medication if that's something you choose, but also, that awareness and tools and strategies and self-compassion to kind of go, actually, yeah, I've done a really good job. Um, and I've been working really hard. And yeah, of course I feel like this. It doesn't change who you are. It just explains who you've always been. And, so it's not an excuse. It's about, okay, well, this is actually what's going on. This now is what works for me. Knowing this, here are the tools, the strategies, the supports that work for me and help me keep on actually doing really well the way I have been doing up to now. So this, in some ways, there's a whole separate topic around this. So I'll do an extra episode about, my own diagnosis and why it is worth it. A lot of feelings can come out of diagnosis. But, for the purpose of here and now, recognize if you've been finding this thing of you've recognized, what, I am trying really hard, this is becoming harder, maybe I am more sensitive than other people, or actually perhaps it shouldn't be as hard as this. Um, Things have just started to come up more due to whatever change it's been in life. That feeling of exhaustion, the overwhelm, the sensitivity, maybe there is a reason and explanation. So if you're finding that, um, and you maybe want to talk through it a little bit more in terms of, well, where should I go with this? I mean, I would, of course, would love to talk with you. I work with women with anxiety and or ADHD all the time, and we look at the tools and strategies that can be helpful because there is such an overlap. Of course, some of the tools and strategies overlap as well, and also just that decision making of, well, should I seek a diagnosis is something that you probably guessed I veer towards suggesting people should get the correct diagnosis, but it's also something to talk through and it is a choice. So if you've been listening and watching this and kind of nodding and going, oh yeah, yeah, some of this stuff sounds really familiar, trust that instinct and look into it a little bit more. You don't have to have been that stereotypical kid climbing the walls and feeling things and being made to sit right in front of the teacher so you don't disrupt everybody else or whatever. You just have to be the person who's been working quietly for decades, holding it all together, just working harder than everybody else to keep up. And if that's you, you deserve support to work with how your brain works. So give me a shout if you want to explore this further. As I said, I'm based in Brisbane and also working online. I specialise in anxiety and ADHD, and I'd love to help you work through your next steps and perhaps support you with some tools and strategies. Um, Thank you for watching this one, and I hope to see you in the next episode where I'll talk about my own diagnosis, why I think it was worth it for me, and whether that gives you any insight. Thanks, lovely, and I'll see you there.